the muscle car that was too bloody hot for 1972 Australia to handle. Some say it would have been the fastest, meanest four-door this country ever built. Others reckon it's just a myth, a headline that got out of control, a ghost that never turned a proper lap at Bathurst. So, how good was the Phase IV really? To answer that, we've got to go inside Ford's skunkworks, into the political storm that killed it, and into the sheds where the survivors still whisper what might have been. Early 1970s Australia, V8s were king. Bathurst was church, and Ford, Holden, Chrysler were locked in a horsepower knife fight. Ford had just crowned the Phase III, a big tank, big rev Cleveland that won Bathurst and terrorized highways. But Ford wasn't done. In boardrooms and back sheds, engineers were quietly shaping the successor. Lighter on its feet, slipperier through the air, nastier in the mid-range. Same mission, new shell, the sleek XA Falcon. They called the project Phase IV. This wasn't a styling exercise, it was a war plan. The secret plan: race engine, road registration. Inside Ford's special vehicles, the famous Lot 6, the brief was deliciously simple. Build a road Falcon that's basically a Bathurst entry with plates. Engine: a hand-built 351 Cleveland with all the blueprinted tricks. Big CFM Holly. High-flow intake, reworked 4V heads, race headers, stouter bottom end, proper oil control. The idea wasn't just peak power, it was power you could belt on for 500 miles. Driveline: top loader 4-speed, fortified 9-inch with Detroit locker, tall highway gears for top-end legs, with shorter sets ready for the mountain. Chassis: 15x7 Globe Bathurst mags, lower profile rubber, stiffer springs, heavy-duty shocks you could rebuild between events, and, finally, proper axle location with a panhard rod so the back end stopped rear steering you into the scenery. Brakes: endurance-minded discs and drums paired with pad compounds that could last an entire Bathurst without a change. Fuel: that infamous 36-gallon tank. Because strategy wins races as much as horsepower does. On paper, the Phase IV wasn't radically different to a Phase III. It was what racers really want. The same concept, sorted. The XA shell brought a lower roofline and cleaner aero. The engine gained tractability. The chassis got the discipline the XY lacked. If the Phase III was a pub brawler with a trophy belt, the Phase IV was a trained boxer. Same punch, better lungs, sharper footwork. What it was built to do. Phase IV wasn't built to impress road testers. It was built to win Bathurst 1972. Ford had 3 Brambles Red Works sedans in prep. One for Alan Moffat, one for Fred Gibson, one as a spare. Cages welded in, tanks fitted, wheels sorted, engines coming off the bench like sniper rifles. The brief from racing boss Howard Marsden was ruthless. Make it last, make it stable, make it quicker over a race stint, not just one lap. Would it have blitzed Mount Panorama? In the dry, with that mid-range torque and endurance setup, it had the makings of a hat trick for Ford. But history had a different script. Bathurst 72 was wet, treacherous. Even the upgraded XYs chewed brakes and slid like elephants on ice skates. The Phase IV never even got to the grid. Instead, Australia got a new legend, Peter Brock in a Tirana dancing away in the rain, and a giant "what if" that still fuels arguments today. The claims, the numbers, the reality. Let's talk pace. The Phase III had already been clocked at silly speeds. The Phase IV promised a touch more everywhere, freer breathing up top, fatter torque down low, a broader power band you could live in. Calculations from the gearing and limiter put the safe top end in the low 100s and 50s. Theoretical revs suggested even more on a runway, but Bathurst is about exits, not fantasies. The real headline wasn't one giant number. It was repeatability. Pull hard out of Reed Park, stay clean over Skyline, keep the brakes alive, stretch legs on Conrod, do it again. And again. That's how you win 500 miles. The Phase IV was built to do that. A race engine in a road car wasn't a figure of speech. It was the actual bill of materials. HO. What does it really mean? Officially, HO meant handling option. It read nicely in brochures and soothed nervous suits. But the old hands will tell you the original spirit was homologation options. The Phase IV is the proof. This wasn't a nicer riding family sedan. It was a homologation sledgehammer with a glove over it. The glove just happened to be Falcon GT trim. The rivalries. Who would it have hurt most? Holden. The lightweight Tirana was getting nastier every month, with V8 whispers in skunkworks. On a tight track, the Tirana had claws. On the mountain's long legs, the Phase IV's Cleveland torque and long gearing would have made Holden work for every inch. Chrysler. The Charger E49 was a weapon to 100 km per hour and quick down the quarter, but Bathurst belongs to mid-corner stability, brakes that don't crumble, and fuel strategy. The Phase IV was engineered for exactly that. In other words, Ford didn't need the outright fastest 0 to 100. It needed the least compromised racing road car. That's exactly what Phase IV was lining up to be. The outlaw energy. Why it terrified people. Phase III had already scared parents. Front pages screamed about 160 mph, bullets on wheels. Phase IV poured petrol on the fire. The idea that 200 road-legal Bathurst specials, with race engines, giant tanks, and locker diffs, would be sold to anyone with the cash? To politicians staring down a rising road toll, it looked like Detroit had lost the plot. And then the headline hit. One Sunday paper, one booming number, a few well-placed quotes, and the nation panicked. Within days, the mood flipped. Ministers called for bans, fleet contracts got waived as leverage, and CAMs pulled the pin on the very rules that justified homologation. In boardrooms, the calculators came out. No class to race, no political cover. The axe fell. Phase IV cancelled. Just like that. The greatest Ford never made was unmade. The disposal. How do you bury a legend? Ford had 4 Phase IVs in the flesh when the music stopped. One Calypso Green production line car, compliance plated, options fitted, the unicorn with Rego in its future. 3 Brambles Redworks sedans, in varying states of race readiness. What do you do with 4 radioactive Falcons? You go quiet. The red cars were shuffled off. 1 became a rally hack, 2 slipped into private hands. The green production car did a stint as an internal test hack, then sat in a dealership like any other GT, eventually sold to a punter who repainted it a more ordinary shade, unknowingly hiding the rarest Falcon ever built in plain sight. For years, it was a fast green Falcon that a few blokes nodded at in traffic. Not a museum piece, not a press release, just a road car with a wild heartbeat. Time did the rest. The rally car later got written off. The others went to keepers. The whispers grew, and the myth-to-fact ratio finally began to even out. Little things that matter to nerds like us. Oil control? Ford welded ears onto the sump. Extra capacity and scavenging so the Cleveland didn't aerate itself through the S's. Cooling by cunning. Those sump kickouts doubled as little air scoops under the car. Crude but effective. Roll stiffness with brains. The rear panhard rod fixed the XY's habit of steering itself under load. Stiffer leaves did the work without a big bar. Gearing by venue, the showroom diff was tall so it wouldn't scream down the Hume. The race sets were ready for Bathurst's exits. Wheels as brakes. The 15-inch globes weren't just pretty. They saved unsprung weight and moved air past the rotors all day. None of this is glamorous. All of it wins long races. The Folklore, police sleepers, hidden prototypes, and other pub talk. Because the Phase IV barely existed, stories filled the gap. Police sleepers, plain Falcon 500s with HO lungs built for highway patrol. Some paperwork and survivor cars suggest slices of truth, T-code engines, odd combos, but as with all good myths, the murkiness fuels the fun. Hidden cars, bricked up bays, buried prototypes, secret sheds at proving grounds. Entertaining? Absolutely. Proven? Rarely. The known cars are documented. Anything else gets the side eye until the numbers line up. Parts in the wild. When a program dies, hardware has a way of finding homes. Oil pans, heads, manifolds. Racers swear they saw Phase IV DNA turn up under other XA and XB bonnets, and later in odd option GTs. The legend of RPO-83, XB-GTs specced with suspiciously phase-ish bits, keeps that conspiracy ember glowing. Myth or not, this is the oxygen that keeps the Phase IV fire bright. The collector cult, where money meets myth. For decades, Phase IV was an enthusiast's ghost story. Then the market woke up. The red works cars surfaced in serious collections. The green production car was restored to its original hue and halo. An auction hammer smacked down a 7-figure price, and the world outside Australia took notice. The money is headline-worthy, but it's not the point. The point is what people are paying for. The end of an era, the last HO that should have been. A political cautionary tale. Speed versus optics. A perfect myth. A car that never had time to get ordinary. Every Phase IV sighting still feels like a rumour that came true. The what if? A quick trip back to the mountain? Close your eyes. Dry Bathurst. 40 degrees on the grid. Big crowd, V8s thumping. The red Phase IVs roll to the front. Lower roofline glinting. Cage bars peeking in the rear window. Globes twinkling like brass knuckles in the sun. Flag drops. Up Mountain Straight, the Cleveland sits in that meaty band Ford built it for. Across McPhillamy, the panhard rod keeps the tail from walking. Down Conrod, the tall top gear stretches the legs. That 36-gallon tank means strategy calls you can't match. Pitboard says, pad's okay. Hour 5 and the lap time delta is still boring. Same minute, same second, same handwriting from the timekeepers. That's what the Phase IV was built for. Boring consistency at unruly speeds. Do they win? In that universe, probably. In ours, the rain came, the headlines came, and the universe took a different branch. Why it still hits a nerve. Because Phase IV is bigger than metal. It's a story about ambition meeting optics, about engineers building the right tool at the wrong political moment. It's also a mirror of how media can spin a number, how governments love an easy villain, how car culture will always push past what's sensible. Most of all, it's a reminder, legends don't have to win races. They just have to nearly happen in a way that makes you feel something. Verdict. So, how good was the Phase IV, really? On merit? Bloody good. Not a fantasy rocket ship. A smarter Phase III with more usable shove, better oil control, calmer rear end, and the long stint discipline Bathurst worships. It didn't reinvent the formula. It perfected it for the job at hand. In the dry, on-period tyres, with Ford's strategy brains, it had every right to be favourite. As a road car, it would have been raw, loud, absolutely antisocial. But also more composed than the XY at speed, the sort of big sedan that eats country miles while the tacho sits where the cam is happiest. As a legend? Untouchable. The cancellation froze it in amber. No fluke DNFs, no yeah but the gearbox whining, no mundane used car years. Just the smell of hot fuel, a headline, and 4 cars that slipped into myth. How good was the Falcon GTHO Phase IV actually? Good enough that politicians blinked. Good enough that collectors pay house money. Good enough that 5 decades on, blokes still argue about a car that never took the start. That's beyond good. That's immortal. If you loved this deep dive, hit like for more Aussie muscle myths, drop your Phase IV what if in the comments, and tell me which unicorn you want next. Tirana V8 that never was? Charger E55 that could have been?